3 years ago, a 68-year-old patient sat across from me and said something I will never forget. "Doctor, is my brain slowly dying?" He hadn't had a stroke. He didn't have Alzheimer's, but he was forgetting his keys almost every day, forgetting names, walking into a room and not remembering why he was there. And what scared him the most wasn't just the forgetfulness. It was the feeling that this was the beginning of something irreversible, that there was nothing he could do to stop it. And unfortunately, that's what many people are told, that as you age, your brain simply declines. Your memory fades, your focus weakens, your processing speed slows down, that it's just part of getting older. But that is not the full story. In fact, it's not even close. Because your brain is not a one-way street. It doesn't just deteriorate over time. Your brain is a dynamic system. It is constantly changing, constantly adapting, and it does that based on one thing: the signals you give it every single day. When I first started out as a physician, I believed the same thing my patient did, that brain aging was inevitable, that cognitive decline was just part of the timeline. But over the past decade, the science of neuroplasticity has completely changed that understanding. Your brain can rewire itself. It can strengthen itself. It can even recover functions you thought were slipping away, but only if you give it the right inputs. So, in this video, I'm going to walk you through the fastest, most evidence-based ways to strengthen your brain. We're going to start with the simplest changes, the ones that require almost no time or effort. And as we go further, we'll move into higher impact strategies, the ones that take a bit more intention but can produce much deeper, longer-lasting changes in how your brain functions. And I want you to stay with me until the end, because the final strategy is, in my opinion, the most powerful intervention we currently have for slowing and even reversing aspects of brain aging. Let's start with something very simple, something you can begin today, and to be honest, this is one that surprised me. There was a large randomized controlled trial involving over 3,500 participants. They were divided into two groups. One group took a daily multivitamin, the other took a placebo, and they were followed for 3 years. What researchers found was that the group taking the multivitamin consistently performed better on memory tests, especially tests involving immediate recall. But here's the part that really stood out. When they compared the results to typical age-related decline, the multivitamin group showed the equivalent of about 3 years of preserved memory function. In other words, their brains were functioning as if they were about 3 years younger. Now, naturally, the first question that comes up is, was this study biased? Was there any conflict of interest? That's always something we need to consider. But when you look closely, the company that supplied the vitamins did not design the study, did not analyze the data, and did not interpret the results. The trial was conducted independently by academic researchers, and that matters because it makes the findings much more credible. I'll be honest with you. Earlier in my training, I was pretty neutral on multivitamins at best. The general attitude was that most of what you take just ends up in your urine, expensive urine, as people like to say. But this study shifted my perspective because it highlights something important. Sometimes cognitive decline isn't just about aging. It's about small deficiencies, tiny nutritional gaps that accumulate over time, and when you close those gaps, your brain performs better. Now let's move on to something a bit more targeted: choline. This is one of the most underappreciated nutrients for brain function, and it plays a critical role in how your brain processes information. Your brain uses choline in 2 major ways. First, it helps produce acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter your brain uses for attention and learning. When you're trying to focus, when you're trying to absorb new information, your neurons rely on acetylcholine to communicate. And the more efficiently those neurons communicate, the better your memory becomes. Second, choline helps build and maintain the structure of your brain cells, specifically the outer membrane, and you can think of this like insulation on an electrical wire. When the insulation is strong, signals travel quickly and clearly. But when that insulation weakens, signals slow down, and that directly impacts how well your brain forms and retrieves memories. The good news is, getting enough choline is actually very simple. One of the best sources is eggs, and for most people, just 1 to 2 eggs per day is enough. You can also get it from fish like salmon or cod, from meats like chicken or beef, or from plant sources like soybeans. And we have solid evidence to support this. In one randomized controlled trial, participants who consumed about 2 eggs per day for 12 weeks showed significant improvements in verbal memory. And in a long-term observational study that followed over 2,500 individuals for more than 2 decades, those with higher choline intake had a 28% lower risk of developing dementia. So again, we're seeing a pattern. Small, consistent inputs leading to meaningful changes over time. Now let's talk about something even simpler: blueberries. If you spend any time looking into nutrition and brain health, you'll notice blueberries come up again and again, and there's a reason for that. They are one of the most well-studied foods for cognitive function. Blueberries are rich in compounds called anthocyanins, the pigments that give them their deep blue color, and these compounds have a powerful effect on your brain. One of the key things they do is increase nitric oxide production, which helps relax your blood vessels. And when your blood vessels relax, you get better blood flow to the brain, more oxygen, more nutrients, and that directly improves how your brain performs. What surprises most people is how little you actually need. About 1 cup per day. That's it. Fresh or frozen, it doesn't matter. And in controlled trials, even something like freeze-dried blueberry powder taken over 12 weeks has been shown to improve memory and cognitive flexibility. So again, very simple, very accessible, and very effective. But now we're going to shift into something more powerful, something that requires a bit more effort but produces dramatically larger results. If you take nothing else from this video, take this: aerobic exercise. There was a landmark study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Participants were divided into 2 groups. One group performed regular aerobic exercise, primarily walking, about 40 to 45 minutes, 3 times per week at a moderate intensity, while the other group did stretching and toning exercises. After 1 year, the results were remarkable. The aerobic exercise group showed a 2% increase in the size of their hippocampus. Now, the hippocampus is the part of your brain responsible for memory formation, and as we age, it typically shrinks by about 1 to 2% per year. So what this study demonstrated was not just slowing decline, but actually reversing it, essentially giving back 1 to 2 years of brain aging. And that's not all. The exercise group also showed increased levels of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. You can think of BDNF as fertilizer for your brain. It helps neurons grow, helps them form new connections, helps repair damage, and enhances neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to adapt and improve. So, when you combine increased blood flow, reduced inflammation, and higher BDNF levels, you create an environment where the brain can actually rebuild itself. The protocol used in the study was simple. You don't need anything extreme. Just aim for 30 to 45 minutes of moderate aerobic activity, 3 times per week, enough to get your heart rate to about 60 to 75% of your maximum. And most importantly, choose something you enjoy, because consistency is what drives the results. Now let me take you back to that patient. After a few months of making these changes, improving his nutrition, adding simple habits, and committing to regular movement, something shifted. He came back into my office, and this time, he didn't ask if his brain was failing. He said something very different. He said, "I feel like my brain is waking back up." And that's the point I want to leave you with. Your brain is not broken. It is responding. It is adapting to the signals it receives. And when you change those signals, you change the system. So don't try to do everything at once. Start with one thing, one habit, one small shift, because that's how this process begins. And over time, those small changes compound into something much bigger. Take care of your brain, because it's capable of far more than you've been led to believe.